To make great compost, you really need to be in touch with a certain intuitive feeling about the compost. It's some part science, some part love, and there's really a lot of feeling and intuition involved. The majority of the products that we blend and sell are potting soils. What is unique about our potting soil is the amount of compost we blend into those mixes. Our Fort V, Fort Light, Perennial Blend and Compost Plus contain upwards of 40 to 45% compost by volume, which by weight is into the 75 to 80% range. When you have such a high percentage in your mix, the structural nature of the compost becomes very important. Just because something has compost in it doesn't mean that it will perform well. Not all composts are created equally. Compost, the word, comes from the Latin componere, which is essentially to assemble.
First step in our composting process is to blend a specific ratio of raw ingredients together.
We use bark and some wood chips or manure. In our case, we use horse manure and cow manure predominantly, and feedstocks that come from the farms we work with. The Central Vermont Solid Waste Management District has been in partnership with us to collect food residuals from schools, restaurants, and other parts of the community in Washington County, which we then feed to chickens. So there's also an imparted chicken manure component.
The chickens feed off the fresh food and macrobiota, which are thriving in the mix. The microbes beneath their feet are just beginning to break down the raw compostables. Around the time the chickens run out of feed in the mix, the microbial feeding frenzy has just begun to kick into full gear. In this stage, we keep temperatures between 131 and 145 degrees Fahrenheit for at least 2 weeks.
As the decomposition process continues, it starts to take on a homogeneous form. It darkens, cools down quite a bit.
While we strive to learn and implement what we can from botany, mycology, soil, and compost science, we are also aware that these fields are just beginning to understand the complexity and diversity of the microbial partners we collaborate with.
And one of the best metaphors that I've found is sourdough. A very small piece of the dough is kept before the bread is baked so that it can be introduced into the next batch. Bakers are continually curating this microbiological element. And in terms of continuity, we're constantly reintroducing old, mature material into the new materials. Between 5 and 10% of the raw ingredients in a new pile is actually mature compost, which we want that pile to propagate and eventually turn into.
We have refined our compost making process to be as consistent as possible, yet every batch of compost is unique. Though we measure and track the temperature, pH, and macronutrient contents of our mixes, we also know how the finished product should look, feel, and smell.
To be a master composter, in some sense, it's the practice of an artisan. It takes a lot of experience and it takes some apprenticeship. There's an intuitive element to making great compost. At Vermont Compost, the people who bring a compost pile from its infancy to maturity are really responsible for the success of the end product, and they're ultimately stewards of a living matrix that we have curated over many years and continue to curate. They're very devoted to the task of making excellent compost to support excellent plant life. There's a certain responsibility that the composter really has to maintain the consistency of our product and therefore the consistent results that our growers have come to depend on.